that Alabama has to do to win this game, and the key for me is simply this: just force some early Zach Mettenberger mistakes, take him out of the game, and that's basically all you got to do. If he's not a factor in this game, I don't see any way that LSU can win.
I think the key for Alabama is going to be stopping the run and making Mettenberger be the guy who has to make those plays because he's going to mess up. And you can't mess up against the Alabama defense because they're opportunistic. They're going to take whatever you give them. So stopping the run, LSU's got a big offensive line, but they haven't seen the type of defense that Alabama plays. So I think stopping the run is going to be their biggest key.
All right, I'll go ahead and give my prediction here. Always a wild card when you throw Tiger Stadium at night into the mix. That's the only thing I think that makes this really an intriguing game because matchup-wise, I don't think these teams are nearly as close as they were last year. I'm going to say Alabama by 10 in this one, 24-14.
Okay, we've actually got the same score for Alabama, but I think LSU has a terrible time on offense. I don't think they're going to get as many turnovers on defense. I say Alabama's going to win 24-3.
All right. Is the spread still hanging around 10 at this point? Or
the spread is 10.5.
Okay, so yeah, I don't know. We'll see. All right. We're going to take another quick break here. Got some other decent SEC games to talk about. We will do that on the other side here of Outputting Our Coverage. Oh, yeah. We're back here on Outputting Our Coverage.
Now, we mentioned Alabama and Auburn very briefly in their rundown. If you want to see a more comprehensive review, remember you can always go to our blog at outputtingourcoverage.wordpress.com. You can find every week's review of Alabama and Auburn. You can also find things that are written by other authors like Garrett Burke, who wrote a really good write-up of Mississippi State, and also of Your Football Fantasy. It's a woman's perspective on fantasy football. Had a lot of action when that one came out. A lot of people seem to like that. We got some comments on there that people really enjoy it.
Bringing in a new demographic to the show.
That's
just how we do things.
That'll actually update every week or 2 weeks as the season keeps going on with that, so stay tuned for that. Also, Andy, I wanted to let you know, I meant to mention it when you said Lattimore's name, but I have instituted a rule here at Outputting Our Coverage. I hope that everybody would please abide by this. In the comments, on the show, I do not want to hear the name Lattimore, at least for 5 or 6 months, until I can get that image out of my head.
Oh, okay. I didn't know where this was going.
I cannot get that image out of my head.
It's rough.
I feel like I want to throw up every time I think about it.
I didn't see it live, but I saw still pictures of it, which is actually probably worse.
Probably worse.
I was kind of like drawing the angles on them with my finger, and I was like,
legs don't do that.
Not supposed to work that way.
Right, and then his kneecap is just sitting on the side of his leg.
That's a little weird.
Yeah, that's the last we're talking about that.
Yeah, so yeah, we will move on to some other SEC games and try to avoid mentioning he who must not be named.
Yes.
At this point, another relative pillow fight happening. We won't spend a whole lot of time talking about this. Vandy and Kentucky. Any chance Kentucky gets their first SEC win here?
None.
Okay, moving on. Upset alerts. Non-SEC matchups here, but I thought they were worth mentioning at least. Tulsa and Arkansas. Maybe closer than you think?
Oh, yeah. Tulsa has not had the year they expected. They're kind of hovering around 500, but Arkansas definitely hasn't either. So
yeah,
this is the lowered expectation bowl.
Tulsa definitely not a Louisiana Monroe. They're not that good.
No,
but I think they still got a shot.
They do. Arkansas is not really playing for anything at this point.
Yeah, so that potentially one to watch. And then Troy playing at Tennessee. What do you think about that one?
I think this is a real upset alert. Tennessee kind of on a downturn right now. They're just going downhill. Troy has upset a couple people.
They were close with Mississippi State. Very close.
Really close with Mississippi State. They've got a high-powered offense. Their defense is actually playing. So I think that one you have more of a chance of an upset on that.
Thankfully, I was gracious and did not put those on the Pick 10 because I think
I would struggle with that.
People. Very tough.
We did have some tough picks on the Pick 10 this week.
That's just how it is. It's a man's game, David.
It is.
or women, if we have any women.
We do have a couple women, I think.
That is also allowed. That was in no way a slight. Right. So moving on.
There's our offensive comment for the show.
We got that one out of the way early this week. That's good. All right, moving on to SEC on SEC matchups. Missouri at Florida. Florida looking a little bit more vulnerable than we had been thinking after that loss to Georgia last week. Missouri has not really looked very good up to this point, though.
They have not. I really did stop and pause at this game. Florida could very possibly have a letdown game, and if anybody picks Missouri, I definitely get it, because Florida could come out flat, turn the ball over again, and they could be down quick. I don't think that's going to happen. The point spread's 16.5. Missouri has looked more like the Missouri we predicted they would be at the beginning of the year. Just not good, not ready for the SEC yet. I think Florida comes in with a purpose, and they win pretty heavily.
Yeah, to me, Missouri has no chance. I mostly just put this in here because I wanted to talk about Dorial Green Beckham, the number one recruit in the country last year. Had been suspended for, I believe, drug-related charges, marijuana, something of that nature, but he is back now, and he has actually morphed himself into their leading receiver from last week. So, something to keep an eye on.
1 week with a young receiver is not that big a deal. He didn't really do anything at the beginning of the year, so I don't know if he can duplicate it.
Yeah, I don't know. Something to keep your eye on at least, but in my opinion, this will give a chance for Florida to practice their offense a little bit.
I think so. They holding on to the football.
Definitely need to do. So I think we're both going to take Florida there. Speaking of Pick 10 games, that one's in the Pick 10. Alabama, LSU in the Pick 10. Of course, we're both taking Alabama there. I never really got a chance to ask you this one outright. I put Auburn in the Pick 10 anyway. Just, hey, you never know.
No, Auburn wins by 3 touchdowns at least.
All right. I'm not that confident, but I will take Auburn in a victory in that one. Let's move on here to Ole Miss and Georgia. Pretty intriguing game in my mind.
It is. Georgia is very high off of a big win against hated rival Florida. They have their path paved to the SEC championship game,
which is crazy to me. How does that happen?
It's all in their hands, and I think that they might have a letdown this week. You get too cocky, your head gets too big. I think Georgia's going to struggle. They're going to turn the ball over to this Ole Miss team, and Ole Miss can hold on to the ball because they run it all the time.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a very close game. Ole Miss's quarterback, Bo Wallace, the JUCO transfer, has really found himself, and I think he will find some holes to exploit in the Georgia defense. But I think the difference is going to be the Georgia running backs. Torrey Gurley had a pretty good game against Florida last week. He was basically the difference in that one, and I think they're going to be the difference in this one again. I'm going to take the Bulldogs.
If we were picking the spread, I would say no doubt I'm picking Ole Miss. It's a 13.5 point spread.
Absolutely, I agree.
But I'm actually going to go out on the limb, and I'm going to go ahead and call the upset. I think Ole Miss is going to get Georgia, mostly because I need to make up some ground in our pick.
Yeah, I tried that last week. Tried to make up ground, blew up in my face.
Right, it can go one of two ways.
That was a disaster. But all right, we'll see. Definitely a close one there. And then to me, the second most interesting SEC game of the week after Alabama LSU, of course, Texas A&M at Mississippi State. We mentioned on the show last week that we really thought that Texas A&M would be just as tough of a test as Alabama for Mississippi State.
Definitely. High-powered offense. Their defense still hasn't gotten there to the SEC caliber yet. They've got holes everywhere, but their offense can keep them in the game with anybody. Mississippi State showed that they had a pretty rough time covering receivers against an Alabama team who does not spread the ball out and doesn't really throw first, so could really have some trouble with that offense. I'm going to pick A&M. I think they're going to get more than the 7.5 that they're given. I think A&M pretty rough. Mississippi State reeling after the Alabama game. I think they don't really have a shot in this one.
Yeah, definitely a tale of two different emotional psyches at this point for these teams. Texas A&M coming off the drubbing of Auburn there on the highest of highs right now. It's always interesting to see how a team will react in Mississippi State's situation coming off really just a moral beatdown there. They got a reality check versus Alabama. Some teams can come back and really rebound and feed off of that. I'm not sure if Mississippi State is one of those teams. I'm not sure that they have all of the senior leadership that you need to be one of those teams that can bounce back and do that. And honestly, another thing that worries me about this one is, like we mentioned earlier, Mississippi State struggling against that Troy team who runs a similar offense to Texas A&M, both heavily based on the pace of play and that.
But without the talent.
Right. So if they're struggling against Troy, I think they're going to have a little bit of trouble against Johnny Football. No question for me, Texas A&M in this one.
Yep.
So that's what we got for the SEC games. We're going to take another quick break, talk about the rest of the Pick 10 matchups, break down the scoreboard. Definitely starting to stratify itself at this point. We'll let you know how that's going here on the other side of outputting our coverage.
We're back, don't know what we're talking about. 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 We're back, here we go. No more commercials. Here we go. Always talking stuff. We're back, don't know what we're talking about, but we're back. Time for the show.
As promised, we are back here on Outputting Our Coverage. David, give us the rundown.
All right, so Antica, late joiner, was the winner this week in the Pick'em at an 8-2 record. Very impressive. I do have to point out one person who, John Mack, did not have a great week, but was the only person who picked the Arizona USC upset. So kudos to you. We had a hodgepodge at 7-3 and 6-4. We had another group at 5-5. Only two at 4-6.
You want to guess who one of those two was?
That would be you and Nick Bacher. So we are really starting to see some spread in the overall pick'em. Max 2011 is just running away with it. We might as well just go ahead and give him his prize of, nothing. But he's
satisfaction of a job well done.
Right. He's 6 games up on Garrett Burke, who a couple people have closed the gap on him a little bit. Ribeye and Bama Fan are tied 2 games back at 59 wins. Rumpel Fuglies is at 58, who, by the way, is still leading my ballot as best name. And then we have some really tight contests with Larry Baker, B.T. Perkins, myself, Drewby Snacks, all within a game of each other. So real tight cluster right there between the 3 and the 8. Still a lot of movement that can be had, but I think one's pretty much settled.
Yeah, I think so at this point. I think last still a competition at this point.
Let's see. We've got John Mack at 47 wins, Andy at 49, Grizzly McDaddy's at 49, and Nick Bacher, who could still technically get there with 51. But
yeah, so that one's up for grabs, gentlemen.
Good luck. Hey, but
still very much.
One thing to watch out for is that Antica joined only with, I think she's only had 5 picks so far out of our 8 or 9 week season. She is about to leap some of y'all, I believe, if y'all don't get it going. Yeah, you got to step it up. Game. You might get lapped.
Yes. That's a terrible feeling. Just adding insult to injury, really, on this college football season for Auburn fans. But anyways, we do have more games to pick this week, starting with the Thursday night game. Probably may have already kicked off. So if that's already happened...
No, it's got about 20 minutes.
20 minutes?
Off.
Okay, all right. So good. We're not double-dipping here or anything. Virginia Tech, Miami...
I hate you for putting this game on here, by the way.
This is a really tough game. ACC teams, mediocre. You never know what teams are going to show up. Pretty much business as usual for ACC football here.
Right, but both these teams are traditional powerhouses. When you see these two teams at the beginning of the year, you think we're going to get a great game. 1 or 2 losses between the two. This might decide the championship. No. Both these teams have been up and down. I can't figure them out. It took me forever to pick this game. I still don't really know who I'm going to pick. You go ahead.
Okay, well... Yeah, like you said, I've been really disappointed in the Thursday night games this year. They've, for the most part, been terrible.
Oh, yeah.
Terrible matchups. I don't remember...
NCAA and NFL.
Yeah, I just don't remember a year like this when the Thursday night games have been this bad. So that's been disappointing. To me, things kind of swing in Virginia Tech's favor here for this one. Miami is pretty one-dimensional with Stephen Harris at quarterback. Their defense has been terrible. The defense is totally unable to create any turnovers. Virginia Tech, not exactly a multi-dimensional team either, mostly focusing on Logan Thomas, their big quarterback, but their defense is a little bit better, and they do have a little bit more of a rushing game than Miami can put together, so I'm going to take Virginia Tech. And it's not like Miami ever has any kind of home field advantage. So
they don't, especially with nobody showing up to the games. I had Virginia Tech picked before we started talking about it. I guess I'm just going to go with them. I really don't know. The 2.5-point spread tells you Vegas doesn't know either.
It's a tough one, but we'll see very shortly. We will have gratification on that one.
We will.
All right, let's move on. We talked a little bit about Rich Rodriguez's Arizona team earlier on in the show, beating USC. This week they have to play the other Los Angeles school at UCLA. UCLA, a team that has surprised me with how they've been able to rebound from some pretty bad years under Rick Neuheisel.
Quickly. I mean, they're just right there.
Yeah, this one's